folks. I know you're still there. You weren't going to go anywhere because that was just a quick commercial break, and we're back. We are back with the Real Men of Real Estate radio show here on KCAA Radio. And you know I've got my guest, Larry Hoffman, this professional note investor, buddy of mine, colleague of mine, and he was getting into his story. We've been talking about note investing, how it's maybe not an easy transition. If you're a real estate investor, there's still a lot to learn. And one of those things where there's a lot to learn is the due diligence process, right? Before break, we were talking about, man, listen, due diligence is half the battle in this game, folks. The due diligence is the key because literally as a note buyer, we're buying a packet of paperwork. Remember, we're not buying a house, folks. We're buying a packet of paperwork. And that packet of paperwork you're investing in is where your money is invested. And so what is said in that packet of paperwork, the order of the chain of assignments of how many times that mortgage has been transferred from bank to bank, everything needs to be in there, accounted for, I's dotted, T's crossed, the whole nine. And it takes a heavy amount of due diligence, heavy enough to where we were suggesting before the break that even when you're a pro at it, and you've got all your due diligence wrapped up and done, prior to buying the note, you maybe let your attorney, because attorneys are our friends in this game, let your attorney review it for you, put a second set of eyes on it, and somebody from a legal standpoint to go over the jargon in those documents and to give you either some warnings before you wire that money and buy that note, that you're thankful they gave you the warnings, or man, maybe you just paid them a little bit of money to say, Larry, green light, it's a good to go, and you feel comfortable now, right?
Yeah.
So if you get the education, right, link up with a mentor, join a coaching group, do what you got to do. Get the learning phase out of the way, folks, as quickly as possible, because once you've learned it, you can move forward in life and utilize it as a wonderful investment vehicle,
right.
These notes. And so, you learn it, you find a note, right? You source a note from somebody who says, yeah, I have one for sale. Here it is. Let's say it fits your profile. You do the due diligence. Everything looks good. You've got the cash. You're like, man, I'm going to buy my first note, man. This is cool. Well, there's even this thing called the acquisition process, which is a little different in this note investing world than it is, say, in real estate. I like to make that comparison. But Larry, I go, okay, Larry, I'm the note seller. Larry, here, I got a note. I got a note. I'm selling it for 50 grand. Here, you can have it. You do all the due diligence. I send you the digital collateral files, everything like that. You do all your due diligence on this asset I'm trying to sell you. And you go like, hey, it fits my profile. I'm in. Well, now what happens? Like, do you make an offer to me, or do you just buy it for 50 grand? How do you buy it? Do you mail me money? How does this work when you acquire a note? How do we buy it?
Yeah. So if your strike price was $50,000 and if that happened to meet like the return that I'm looking for, then yeah. So, I'll get it. And then we have an agreement. And so you'll send over the collateral files and everything. And, I'll do my due diligence. And if I want to move forward, then I'll go ahead and sign a purchase sales agreement with you. And then, let me just preference that you were talking about the attorneys. I always have my attorney look over all the collateral files, every single one of them. So that way I can just get the green light on it. And once, like the BPO, the title and everything signs off on it, and I'll say, yep, Patrick, I'm 100% interested. Either you'll send me a purchase sale agreement or I'll send you a purchase sale agreement. And then usually I funded my notes within like a week, or I funded the deals within 30 days, depending on how fast, my due diligence process, happens. Typically it's about 2 weeks, right? So yeah, like I said, I funded it within a week to two to up to 30 days. But the beautiful part of it is you're not having a closing. You're not doing everything that you typically do with a typical house purchase. You have all the collateral files. You sign the purchase and sale agreement. Either you send a check or you wire the money over. It's that simple. It's pretty simple.
I'll tell you, I think one of my first note deals, right? And very new to the business. And one of my first note deals, I wired, $37,000, right, to somebody. And then like it took about 2 or 3 weeks for them to get me the collateral file. Yeah. So folks, I'm just telling you, it's interesting, right? It takes a little bit of stomach and it's something new, right? It's new. It's outside your comfort zone. And especially folks that were in real estate, used to those real closings and all that. This is way different, right? Literally, I'm wiring my money to somebody, maybe in a whole different state somewhere that I've never met, wiring somebody 37 grand. And then the collateral file, which is what I'm buying, right? That packet of paperwork, the note, I'm buying the note, which is a document, an IOU, a promise to pay. I'm buying that. And then I wire this money and like, it takes 3 weeks and finally and I'm sweating the whole time.
Yeah.
I'm sweating
Yep.
the whole time, right? So it is a little bit interesting, guys. And you know, that the what you're doing, folks, is you're basically filling out a set of what they call transfer documents, right? And that's how one of these acquisition takes place. So like Larry was saying, if I'm selling Larry a note for 50 grand, it meets his buy profile, it meets his expected return, and everything's all hunky dory. He does the due diligence and it's all good. Well, Larry, you're going to wire me 50 G's based off of one document called an LSA, a loan sale agreement. Basically an agreement between me and you that's written up and signed on paper that says Larry intends to wire me the funds to buy this note from me. Then you wire me the funds, and me as the seller, now it's my objective to have the transfer legally of this asset take place, like in county record, right? Because that has to happen. If it doesn't take place in county record, I still own it legally, right? And so we have to transfer the ownership of this promissory note from one note holder to the new one, which is Larry now, right? And so there's these in the acquisition process, folks, there's the LSA, which is the loan sale agreement, which says, hey, I intend to buy this and I'm going to buy this, and we have an agreement and we're going to do it at this price. But then when the money's wired, there's transfer docs that have to take place to legally change the ownership of this thing. So tell me about those. How does that look?
Well, yeah, I mean, depending on whether you're doing I guess a contract for deed or a mortgage, you know, so you do, if it's a contract for deed, that you just sign a deed and then also the seller's interest. But if it's a mortgage, right, you'd have to do the assignment of mortgage, and also the allonge on both of them, right? And so you have those documents that need to be recorded, and that's the beautiful part about, if you don't understand it, the attorney that you're working with will understand that, and that between you, the servicer, or I'm sorry, you and the seller will be able to coordinate everything, and that attorney that you hire will work with that seller to make sure that all the documents all, you know, are there and covered. And that's why I absolutely love working with this attorney that I'm using, because he makes sure they make sure that everything is in place. I mean, I just purchased 5 notes, and there were like 2 of them, two notes, 2 out of the 5 that had some, I mean, not major things wrong, but like little minor things, like missing assignments and things like that, missing power of attorney. And so my attorney made sure that, you know, everything was there. So when if I go to sell this note, that my new buyer doesn't have to do anything. My goal is, once I get that note, I want to make 100% sure that it's in a better state than when I bought it. So my new buyer, once again, if I go to sell it, there's nothing wrong with it.
Yeah. You clean it up and put everything in the proper order and make it nice. You know, sometimes we receive these collateral files from some of these note sellers, and boy, is it a gobbledygook of,
oh, it's a mess. They can be a mess.
It's a mess. But hey, that is a part of the business. And that's why we talk about guys getting a mentor, getting coaching, joining a coaching group, whatever it takes, so that, you know, even though you're hiring an attorney, or even though you're hiring an outside service provider to help you with something, if you don't know what they're supposed to be looking for, what they're supposed to be reviewing, then how do you know to judge whether or not they're really helping you the right way? So you really have to know your stuff, right? And you know, these transfer docs, guys, it's just stuff that has to be like notarized, recorded in the county, and things like that. That says this entity or person no longer has interest in owning that promissory note and mortgage and such. This new person does now. And then that new person gets placed in the chain of ownership, like we like to call it, in that collateral file. So now Larry becomes a note owner. He's bought his $50,000 note. He's got the collateral file. He's got the proper acquisition documents in place, notarized, recorded legally. He now owns his own note. Well, now what do you do, man? So they say that they say this is pretty passive. But I know that mortgage companies send out every single month monthly statements to collect mortgage payments from people. I know that they keep a history of pay history. I know that as a mortgage owner, a homeowner myself, they would send me my year-end statement and shows me what the remaining balance is, and they kept track of the amortization schedule. And they did a lot, even though it didn't seem like it when we're the borrower. We just got these pieces of paper in the mail, but there's a lot of work on the back end. Now, we're talking about owning a note being really passive. So there's this thing called a servicing company. What's that?
Yep. That they are a third-party company that handles all the handling, collecting, and sending out notices between, you know, the bank and the borrower. So, and that's why I am 100% adamant about this. Don't ever self-service a note, ever, 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 ever. please use a servicing company to handle all the servicing. And if you do, and I've purchased self owner finance notes that, I was able to prove all the history, and I immediately moved them over into a servicing company. Just please do not ever self-service a note.
Yeah. So it's wild, guys. As a note investor, it opened my eyes a little bit. I was like, wait a minute. Because, sometimes property managers, right? Property managers, if you hire a property manager to manage your rental for you, they take quite a bit of money. And they still just are the liaison between you and the homeowner. The property manager is still going to call you and say, hey, we need to hire a plumber. So, the note servicing company, guys, they act as the intermediary between you and the homeowner. So they're the ones sending out the monthly statements. The servicing company collects the monthly mortgage payment from the homeowner. The servicing company has all of the communications and debt collection practices that go along with being a lender and all of that. They do all of this for you folks, $20 a month.
Yep.
And when I heard that, when I first started, I'm like, wait a second. So guys, it's so crazy that for $20 a month, you hire a servicing company, you take the loan that you've now bought, right? You take this mortgage note you now own, like Larry, he bought this $50,000 note from me. Well, he immediately takes the paperwork and that note and everything, and he does an onboarding process with a licensed loan servicing company. And so when the person who's living there gets the transfer statement in the mail, and all you homeowners listening, if you've owned a home for any amount of time, you've had one of these, where you get a letter in the mail and it says, Wells Fargo is no longer your lender. It's now Bank of America. And so you got to start paying your mortgage payment to Bank of America. That's a mortgage transfer. But really that means your mortgage was sold, right? Behind closed doors from bank to bank. And so guys, remember this. This is why people don't really know about it. It seems really, really weird because trust me, when Larry buys this $50,000 mortgage note, he now owns someone's mortgage. He becomes the bank, but they're not going to get a letter in the mail that says you now owe your monthly mortgage payment to Larry Hoffman.
Right.
It'll be a licensed loan servicing company and it sounds like a corporate bank name and such. So to the borrower, they know nothing. They just know that their mortgage got transferred to a different bank, but it's Larry's, and Larry's starting to collect that mortgage payment, folks. So listen, we are going to continue with this in our last segment right after this next commercial break. We're going to be right back. Don't go anywhere.